Sarah and Mark drove down a winding, isolated road in the middle of nowhere. The wind howled through the trees, and torrents of rain poured down. They were on their way to visit Blackwood Manor, a sprawling, centuries-old mansion that was left to Mark after the death of his last surviving grandparent. The manor had been vacant for over 30 years, and Mark's family was unaware of the sinister reputation Blackwood Manor had. In the small town of Ravenwood, the locals spoke of it in hushed tones. Its dark reputation through the town served as a warning to children to keep them indoors after dark. Mark and Sarah were recently married and decided to live in Blackwood, believing that raising their children in a small town would be beneficial. And with Mark being an architect, remote work was available. They decided to arrive the night before essential services were turned on and to explore the house. From there, they'd be able to determine what changes needed to happen before it was habitable. As they approached the mansion, they noticed that it towered over the thick forest that surrounded the manor. Its shadowy silhouette loomed in the distance, and the forest seemed to swallow the light. The couple arrived at the mansion, and its grandeur took their breath away. Blackwood Manor was a massive stone structure with ivy creeping up its walls. Large arched windows were on either side of the entrance and stared out like empty eye sockets. As Sarah and Mark stepped out of their car, the rain suddenly intensified, soaking them to the bone. In a mad dash, they made it to the front door, their footsteps echoing in the empty concrete courtyard. Mark fumbled with the old-fashioned key, struggling to unlock the heavy wooden door. Finally, it creaked open, revealing a dark foyer, with only the available natural light allowing them to see. As they turned on their flashlights, they noticed that the interior of the manor was even more imposing than they expected. The walls were adorned with faded paintings of somber-faced individuals. Dust-covered furniture and cobweb-covered chandeliers added to the dated ambiance. Despite the ominous surroundings, Sarah and Mark were excited about their home. They explored the ground floor, each room leaving them more and more excited with the possibilities. A grand dining hall, a decaying library filled with ancient and faded tomes, a ballroom with a cracked ornate mirror, and a large kitchen with an attached larder. As night fell, the couple decided to set up camp in the master bedroom. They lit a few candles that casted flickering shadows on the walls. The rain continued to beat down against the windows, creating a symphony of sound. As they sat on the edge of the bed, huddled together for warmth and comfort, Sarah began to tell Mark how the house was making her feel, how she felt that she was being watched and heard the pitter-patter of feet. But when she investigated, she found nothing, and she was worried that the manor could be haunted by ghosts. Mark chuckled, dismissing her story as superstition.
There's no such thing as a ghost, Sarah. This place is just old and creepy, that's all. Once the electric company turns the power on, that will all go away. It's just an old and large house. I wouldn't be surprised if we were hearing mice. We should probably get a bunch of mouse traps and stuff from the store tomorrow anyway, just in case.
Sarah nodded, though a shiver ran down her spine as she had a hard time shaking the feeling. It was still early in the evening, but the lack of light made it hard to navigate the house, and the journey had left them tired. Eventually, they decided to play a game of cards to distract and relax themselves. But as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. As darkness descended, the temperature in the room dropped rapidly, and the candles flickered ominously. Suddenly, Sarah's cards seemed to move on their own, sliding across the table, as if guided by unseen hands. Mark's confident demeanor waned as he watched in disbelief. The room continued to grow darker, and the oppressive atmosphere weighed down on them. The candlelight flickered for a final time before they quickly went out. Just as Mark was going to say something, a blood-curdling scream echoed throughout the manor. Sarah and Mark jumped to their feet, their hearts pounding. The sound had come from the hallway just outside their room. They grabbed their flashlights and cautiously made their way towards the only door. In the hallway, they found a portrait of a young woman hanging on the wall. Her face was twisted in agony, as she appeared to be screaming and reaching out. The painting seemed to be much newer, had less faded than the others they had found earlier in the day. In unspoken agreement, they grabbed a few of their belongings and were making their way out of the house. However, they continued to encounter more and more unsettling phenomena. Whispers echoed through the empty rooms, and cold drafts of air brushed against their skin. Distant doors slammed shut on their own, and shadows danced in the corner of their vision. It was as if Blackwood Manor was alive. As they descended the stairs, they came to a room that they had not seen before. The room was filled with old and rotting furniture, and a large, dusty mirror that seemed to call out to them. Sarah couldn't turn her gaze away from the mirror, and Mark's breathing started to increase. This room was not here before. They should have entered a large living room that would eventually lead to the foyer. Unknown to Mark, Sarah continued to stare at the mirror, and her reflection started to change. The reflection transformed into that of a young woman, the same one from the painting in the hallway. The woman's eyes were filled with sorrow as she looked back at Sarah. Suddenly, the woman was pulled back into a reflection of the hallway, and when Sarah turned around, she screamed. Mark rushed to her side. Her face was pale with fear, and as Mark followed his wife's gaze, he saw a woman standing in the hallway. The smile on her face was not one of happiness, but one that promised pain.
We need to leave, now.
Mark exclaimed, his voice trembling. But as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut with a deafening crash. They were trapped, surrounded by an oppressive darkness, and the woman watched on, her smile growing larger than should physically be possible. The temperature plummeted, and their hot breath seemed to leave wisps in the air. The vengeful spirit that haunted Blackwood Manor had awakened, and it hungered for those who had disturbed its peace. It whispered in their ears, filling their minds with horrifying visions. Sarah and Mark were overwhelmed by the malevolent force, and their sanity started to slip away as they were forced to relive horrors unimaginable. They screamed and pleaded for mercy, but there was no escape from the relentless torment. As the light of their flashlights began to fade, their screams went unheard of by the outside world. Blackwood Manor added the souls of Mark and Sarah to the legion of horrors that dwelled within the dark.